We recently brought you that 8 Series convertible review and had told you at the time that India will only get the 4-door Gran Coupé. Well, that car has now broken cover. The 8 Series Coupé comes with 2 doors, while the Gran Coupé is offered with 4, meaning 2 doors at the rear too. So it's easier for passengers who want to get into a proper rear seat. While the Coupé version has the 2+2 seating layout, the Gran Coupé gets what BMW calls the 4+1 seating. Simply means that the fifth occupant has enough seating space between the 2 seats at the rear, comfortable just for short journeys. The new Gran Coupé has a longer wheelbase than the Coupé or convertible. So mechanically the car remains pretty much the same, but of course there are some very obvious differences, both in terms of styling and of course physically in terms of dimension as well. Styling wise, up to about the start of the A-pillar, the car is pretty much identical to the 2-door version. That's both the Cabrio as well as the Coupé. But from here is where the changes begin. The angle of the A-pillar and then of course the sheer length of the car. Overall, the car is 230 millimeters longer than the Coupé, and 200 millimeters of that goes into just the wheelbase. Now that's the obvious part, because of course you have to have that second door. The whole idea here is to focus on comfort, to focus on easy, getting in and getting out of the car, but without compromising the dynamic aspect too much. So I guess that was the challenge for the engineering team. I can't really vouch for that since I'm not driving the car today, but yes, you also have a difference when it comes to the roof, because overall the height of the roof at its highest point is 60 millimeters taller. Now that's been done to ensure that you get a good sense of headroom at the back, even though you want to still maintain that coupe-like exterior proportion. So it is longer and taller, as you heard, but it's also 30 millimeters wider than the Coupé and convertible. That liberates more room in the cabin and makes for a longer central console as well. Visually, both the 8 Series Coupé and Gran Coupé are pretty similar, but the former looks more athletic thanks to its shorter wheelbase and a more receding roofline. The project lead for the 8 Series Gran Coupé shared with me that there were 3 clear focus areas when it came to designing this car, from possibly more the perspective of the end user than really just the engineer. And the first 2 I've kind of alluded to already. Of course, yes, you had to have more space at the back, and which meant you also had to have a good sense of headroom. So yes, you've got the slightly taller roof. And sitting back here, I can kind of vouch for that right now. You don't feel cooped in, and it does seem fairly generous. Though of course, please don't go comparing this with the 7 Series sedan. That's the first. The second is the ease of getting in and out, the egress and ingress, and that's again something I've mentioned. The wide opening of the door and the sense of being able to get in and out quickly because of the way the seat has been designed. Yes, can vouch for that too. Speaking of the seat, it is still a bench, but it's been cleverly done, because the idea here is that, look, it is a car that can seat 4 or 5 people, mostly 4, sometimes 5. I'll explain that. The point there being that, while it does serve that purpose, it's not trying to be a sports sedan. It still wants to be a sports car, which means dynamic driving. And typically what happens to people at the back, you get tossed around. So the bench, as it were, still gets a little bit of extra contouring. So the shape of these 2 seats at the back is almost like an individual sports seat without them being individual seats. That's clever, because not only does it make for comfortable sporty driving for rear seat passengers, but more importantly, it just makes for comfortable driving. I mean, this is really a nice angle. You feel well cushioned into this seat, and it gives you that little sense of extra luxury as well, because everything seems more individualized. It's not just a typical bench. Of course, it also means you do get the drop-down armrest, and you can also reach into the boot if you so wish. because, well, you can also put in skis if you want to, but let me not digress. You have this little panel here. This part is standard, and that's why 5-seater, well, it's not technically a 5-seater, but for short distances, maybe a smaller child, yes, somebody can sit here, but it's not necessarily what would be recommended, therefore, as a 5-seater. And of course, the whole idea then goes back to the whole idea of who the customer for a car like this would be. So yes, luxury is important, yes, space is important, but again, I go back to the proof of all of that in terms of being dynamic. Can't wait to drive it. With respect to engine options, the BMW 840i Gran Coupe uses a 3-litre inline 6-cylinder twin-turbo motor tuned for 335 bhp and 500 Nm of peak torque. The variant is offered in both rear-wheel and all-wheel drive configurations. The 840d Gran Coupe X-Drive uses a 3-litre inline 6 twin-turbo with 315 bhp and 680 Nm of peak torque. The 8 Series Coupé misses out on the 840i variant but gets the 840d with the same engine specifications as the Coupe. The two models also share the top-of-the-line M850i X-Drive trim that's powered by a 4.4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine that's got 523 bhp and 750 Nm of peak torque. All engines are paired with the 8-speed Steptronic automatic transmission, and the petrols also get the M Sport differential. Of course, there's the M8 and the M8 Gran Coupe that are also coming soon, which will share engines with the M5 competition. So expect power figures to be north of 610 horsepower on those. India will get the 8 Series Gran Coupe and the M8 Coupe and convertible in the coming months.